Welcome! Thank you for coming by. I'm Jeremy. Let's talk a little bit about Blade Runner 2049. So this movie was released 35 years after Ridley Scott's seminal science fiction masterpiece. Is this a worthy addition into the series, or is it just Hollywood trying to sell us nostalgia and sell us our childhood back? 30 years after the events of the first film, new Blade Runner LAPD Officer K unearths a long-buried secret that has the potential to plunge what's left of society into chaos. So before we really get into the review, first of all, I should say, this is going to be spoilers-free. So if you've seen the trailers, that's all you're going to get from me. I recommend going into this movie knowing as little as possible. So with that taken into consideration, I'm going to try to be super broad as to not give anything away. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to do it for you. And then also a lot of people have been asking, do you have to have seen the original film to understand this new one? And the answer is absolutely no, you don't. Before it even starts, it spends about 35 seconds worth of text on the screen to catch new viewers up on anything that happened in the original film. With that said, you're going to have a much deeper appreciation if you have the context from the original. Now, going back and revisiting a movie from 1982 this far afterwards, you may feel like you've seen tons of these elements before in other movies. That's because the original Blade Runner is that iconic. Is Blade Runner 2049 going to have that legacy? It's really hard to say. We'll have to give it a little bit of time. I suspect not. But with that said, this is one of the greatest science fiction films I have literally ever seen. It's directed by Denis Villeneuve. The guy is a French filmmaker that really hasn't had a misstep yet. Blade Runner 2049 is one of the most beautiful movies ever shot. It just oozes with late 70s, early 80s hard sci-fi. It stars Ryan Gosling as the new Blade Runner. His name is K. And true to Ryan Gosling's filmography, he's a pretty stoic character. Says he's a man of few words. Ryan Gosling's also this dude that kind of looks like a blank slate on his face, but somehow he's able to emote, and you can get a lot of a read about his emotions from his eyes or something. Obviously, if you've seen the trailers, you know that Harrison Ford is back as Rick Deckard. He does a really good job. I was kind of worried that it was going to be a big distraction. When he first shows up, I swear to God, I thought he was going to say, "Chewie, we're home." But then 5 minutes after that, I had gotten invested into it because I saw it wasn't just shoehorning him in for gimmick's sake. He actually has a very pivotal role. Kay has a virtual girlfriend, played by Ana de Armas. I haven't seen her in a lot of movies. However, she was in Knock Knock, the Eli Roth movie. And she kind of the character reminds me of a little bit of the movie Her. She's this really supportive, domesticated housewife, but she can morph to whatever your fantasy is. So she goes through several different looks, and this actress is just gorgeous. It's hard to watch. It's just distracting. But anyways, she was really good, and there's this interesting relationship between this character who physically is there, and then this character that is just a projection. But the way that the two of them may or may not have this really strong relationship is just another one of the many kind of intellectual and philosophical ideas that the movie bounces around. Dave Bautista, Drax the Destroyer, plays one of the replicants in this film, and despite the fact that he's a big giant dude, he really is able to tap into this emotional side of himself really well, and I suspect that if people will cast him, he will continue to give good performances. And then Jared Leto plays a character by the name Wallace, and obviously he's a replicant. He's got the kind of classic silver reflection in his eyes, and he's very interesting. He's a character with a god complex, and again, I don't want to get too specific into things that happen. It's a really interesting choice that he makes, and he does play on the robotic side with the delivery and the cadence of his voice. But then it's really cool. You got to see it. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but he definitely makes an impact when he is in the movie. So the story and the plot this time around are really dense and intricate, and this is a movie with a 3-hour runtime. There are little tiny details that I think are left ambiguous intentionally, just so that you've got stuff to think about or to go rewatch it afterwards. The original Blade Runner is so iconic because it kind of set the precedent for what science fiction and especially dystopian movies looked like moving forward. And this really looks like it exists in that same universe. It doesn't have the kind of George Lucas prequels look where everything looks way after the original. It actually feels like this is a 30-year evolution of what this world looked like then to what it looks like now. And it's extremely fascinating. I think that they capture this really interesting dynamic between really dense urbanization and then like this apocalyptic wasteland, just depending on where you're at, because it's a big world. There's a little bit of all of these things, and it plays very well. The music sounds very true to the original, but the sound design is so intense and it almost becomes grating and overbearing at sometimes. And I think that is such a bold choice because it does it to reflect what's going on the screen and the way that the characters must be feeling. And I wonder how accessible this movie is going to be to just wide audiences, because it's long, it's slow and ponderous, and it's got intensely long stretches of silence and then long stretches of just really grating industrial sound. So like, it's probably gonna weird some people out. The performances are strong all the way around. It feels like returning to Blade Runner in that same world, but it really does build on it and open it up and expand it and just show us the possibilities of what this potential franchise could be moving forward. And if there is another one, I really gotta say that if Denis Villeneuve is back on board, I'm on board. Otherwise, I'd be a little more skeptical or a little more apprehensive. As it stands right now, on a scale of 1 to 5, I am giving Blade Runner 2049 5 stars. That's right, this is my first ever 5-star review, and I literally would put Blade Runner 2049 in my top 10 of all time. I might be pretty high on it right now because I just literally saw it yesterday. Check with me in a couple of weeks, but I have a feeling this is one that's going to stick with me for a long time. So that's my really long form general thoughts on this movie. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you seen it? Are you looking forward to seeing it? Is Harrison Ford really as old as he looks? I was going to say something else, but this is the spoiler-free review. Thank you guys so much for coming by. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, take just a second to click that little thumbs up button. It really helps me out and my ego. And if you want to check out more reviews and other content, all you got to do is subscribe and click that little bell for notifications. I'm Jeremy. Be terrible.